Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 26th of December of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Kiev, about the common situation in Ukraine, and once again the most important update is that about the mobilization process. We have a lot of notes. I believe that you have already read lots of things, lots of articles, lot of notes about the upcoming Ukrainian mobilizations. From some side this document is very difficult to read, from another side it's very simple, but if you want to hear my opinion, I would like to summarize everything about the mobilization law, and I'll explain you the main thing, the main message that Ukrainian authorities are trying to send by making this law, by adopting this law. So before adopting this law, there were civilians, like regular man who was working in suburbs, who was working in subways, engineers, teachers, IT sort of guys, and many other types of professions. And there was a military profession, those who are currently located on the combat line in Avdiivka, Marinka, Sinkovka, Krynki, and so on. And there used to be a mobilization process, something like filtration, when the Ukrainian authorities were trying to get someone on the street and to send them to the training centers, and after that to the combat line. So this is the main process, very simplified process that used to be. And now there is a completely different situation. You know that there is such a thing like public contracts. I don't know, maybe I'm using the wrong word in English. Public contracts, it means that, for example, when you start using YouTube or Google or any other platform, you're signing a public contract because you're accepting to use the rules of this contract as soon as you start using this or that platform. So basically the Ukrainian mobilization law is a public contract. It's a public contract that says that if you are a civilian citizen of Ukraine, from now on you will follow this public contract. And according to this public contract, there are no more civilians, there are no more teachers, IT engineers, there are no more people who works somewhere along the Ukraine, in Lvov or somewhere else. There are two categories of people: military forces and those who cannot be applied on the military service due to his health. So basically, starting off, as soon as this law is going to have its power, because there are few days should pass after the adoption of law when this or that document will receive its let's say power. It's according to law. After starting this moment, there are going to be no more civilians in Ukraine, and every single person in Ukraine will be considered as a military person. The only difference between all these engineers, teachers, and drivers that lives in Kiev, that now located in Kiev, with the Ukrainian soldiers that currently located in Avdiivka, Sinkovka, is that one guy doesn't have rifles, and the second part, those who are on the combat line, has rifles. There are no more differences between them. And if you you're gonna need to sign some to create some application, to create your own personal account, and you're gonna receive there some notes that now it's your turn to go to Avdiivka. So this is going to be something like this: you're like a military person, you're an officer, you're a soldier who currently makes some civilian stuff like driving a taxi, but you're a military person, and when we call, you're gonna go. So there is no period of time, a gap between you're a civilian and then you're a military. You're a military as soon as this law will be adopted and will receive its political power. So this is the main reason and the main differences. Furthermore, after that scandal, let's say, law was published, Zaluzhny took a decision to give his own opinion about the situation. And first thing he told that, listen to me guys, this was not my number to mobilize 500,000 people. This is not the thing that I was asking. I didn't even provide Zelensky nothing. I didn't tell him about the numbers. So, and we understand that this 500,000 army, 500,000 army, is an attempt to set up Zelensky and to reduce his ratings and his popularity among the Ukrainians. Because, I ask myself the same thing. So what is the difference between mobilizing at once 500,000 army, or let's say to mobilize every single month another 100,000 soldiers, and to mobilize in the total another 500,000? So the things are the same, but the representation of these two approaches are completely different. And somebody tried and wanted to set up either Zelensky or Zaluzhny, and probably they did the best. Another important thing from Zaluzhny, that he confirmed that the Ukrainians lost Marinka. It was his official position, not like a speculation or something or propaganda. This is a complete and final point of Zaluzhny, that Ukrainians left Marinka. Furthermore, he added that there are very high chances that Ukrainians will be forced to leave Avdiivka also within 2 or 3 months. And now we're moving to another thing. We see that a very terrible situation, very bad news are coming from Ukraine. Mobilization, checkpoints on the road, the leaving of Marinka, and probably the leaving of Avdiivka within the next 2 or 3 months. So obviously very negative messages are coming from Ukraine. So that's why the Ukrainian authorities, they needed to find a solution how to prevent all this negative media trend and to bring some victory. And once again, one more thing about the checkpoints. The sources are saying that Ukrainians are establishing checkpoints for, let's say, mobilizing process, but don't believe this. The Ukrainians are creating the checkpoints in the cities, not for mobilization process. They're making these checkpoints to prevent the strikes and massive strikes from people. All these checkpoints is something like it's like already a prison, like a cave, and it's the main purpose of this, not to allow to create to be Maidan 3. So this is the main purpose of these checkpoints. And so the Ukrainians needed a victory, and as we discussed in the morning video, this night the Ukrainians using two Su-24 attacked the Crimea, attacked, to be more precise, Feodosia port, and as a result of that strike, that the rockets were flew around 300 kilometers, and as a result of that strike, the Ukrainians managed to destroy Russian big marine ship by the name of Novocherkassk. This ship was destroyed, and this is the victory. This is the victory that Ukrainians tried to use to reduce the negative media phone from the updates about the mobilization process, about the loss of Marinka, about possible loss of Avdiivka. And now people from Ukraine are not focused on, maybe some of them are focused, but of course lots of people change their focus, and they're trying to be happy and to get some happiness, some positive news, positive feelings from the situation in Feodosia. So this is the thing, and we see once again the Ukrainian pattern that they're using and continue using, and they will use this pattern in the future. If you remember, once again, when the Ukrainians lost Bakhmut, and when on the 21st of May Wagner forces, Prigozhin, announced about complete establishing control over Artyomovsk Bakhmut, on the 22nd of May, the Ukrainians launched their borderlands operation between Kharkiv and Belgorod, and they also tried to show another media victory and to move the focus from one negative situation to one positive. The same story, if you remember, we got in Zaporozhye area when the Ukrainians launched their greatest counteroffensive operation on the 4th of June, and when on the 6th of June everybody realized about the massacre that was taking place there, something happened with Kakhovka Dam. I'm not blaming the Ukrainians, I'm not blaming the Russians. Currently I don't have official information, nobody has, who destroyed. One side blames another, but exactly on the 6th of June, according to the pattern, something happened with Kakhovka Dam, and Ukrainians moved their focus from one negative situation to another. And this is the reason when I was telling you that if the Ukrainians will ever leaves Krynki, obviously we're going to see another disaster or another, let's say, media victory from the Ukrainian side. And now we are moving to Krynki, because we have also lots of very interesting updates and details that I would like to point your attention to. First of all, I would like to mention that during the previous days, the Russians intensified their Lancet strike in this area, and just during the previous 24 hours we got a lot of geolocated confirmation as the results of Russian Lancet strikes and significant number of armored vehicles the Ukrainian forces lost during those strikes. Artillery forces, let's say tanks, armored vehicles, personnel carriers, let's say just the trucks, like logistic machines were destroyed. So and the question is why the Russians have intensified the use of Lancet strikes. There might be lots of answers to the questions, but I will share with you my opinion. First of all, lots of Lancet strikes. This is one thing. We will return to conclusions, but first let's discuss everything in details. Another artillery system was destroyed a little bit at the same area. The Russians managed to destroy another artillery system. So 4 geolocated cases just for the previous 24 hours. Then when we're talking about Krynki, we have the same picture. At least four geolocated cases, how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian boats in among the Dnipro Islands, among the Dnipro River, Kazachila Gerka Konka. So the main purpose of those attacks were to destroy and shut down the Ukrainian supply support, to break evacuation, and so on. So once again, we have 4 geolocations of Lancet strikes. We have more than 4 geolocations of FPV drone bombardments, bombing of Ukrainian boats in this area. And once again, when talking about, let's say, Tyaginka, the city that Ukrainians use as the main base for supporting the Ukrainian forces in Krynki, we have the video of multi-launch rocket system bombardments of the city. So you might ask, so what is the connections between the situation and what is the conclusion based about the intensifying of Russian bombardments and use of Lancet? The thing is that during the probably the second or third day in a row, we are not receiving any updates about FAB usage. There were no FAB 500 bombings, there were no FAB 1500 bombings. So this, and as we discussed, this situation is completely connected with the some increase or level of air defense from the Ukrainian side, and now the Russians try to compensate the complete absence of use of FAB 500 and FAB 1500 with different types of weapons, like Lancet strikes, like FPV drone strikes against boats, and like multi-launch rocket system against the main base logistic area in Tyaginki that Ukrainians use before the next, let's say, landing operation in Krynki. Once again, I'll repeat my idea that we have already discussed in the previous video. If the Russians are not able to renew their bombardments of this area with FAB 500 and FAB 1500, the Ukrainians will have possibilities to continue their concentration of forces on the Russian bank of the river, and they will increase the number. They have possibility to increase the number of forces for 1 or even 2 battalions, if the Russians are not going to renew their FAB bombings. And for now, as we understand, the Russians don't have this possibility, or maybe this is the Russian plan. Now they understand that the number of forces of the Ukrainian army in this area is around 100 soldiers, so it's just a waste of aviation bomb to use them in this area. So maybe the Russians are trying to show the Ukrainians that they can't use FABs and so on, and they want to think Ukrainians that everything is like their control, and they want to allow them to concentrate, like say, 2 battalions in this area, and after that the Russians will renew bombings with even heavier force and heavier power or something like this. Another interesting video we got from Mykolaiv, from the Russian bank of the river. This is probably the second geolocated confirmation of presence of Ukrainian armored vehicles on the Russian bank of the river. This is engineering machine that probably was abandoned by the Ukrainians during August or September, and the Russians during the reconnaissance operation managed to discover this machine and basically destroyed this machine with FPV drone bombing. So this is the situation in Krynki. Before we move to Zaporozhye area, another interesting statistics once again about the ship that was destroyed and about the entire situation in the Black Sea. Of course, during the special military operation, we had lots of updates about destroyed Russian ships, but we don't have the let's say the summarized update, the summarized analytics, what effect all those attacks took, how all the situation affected the Russian fleet. Has the game been changed by all those attacks or something like this? And the Ukrainian sources made a simple calculation, a simple analysis of the situation. And according to the Ukrainians, as a result of, let's say, clashes in the Black Sea, and as a result of those missile strikes, Navy drone strikes, FPV drone strikes, and different types of drone strikes against the Russian fleets, the Russians, by the 26th of December, have already lost around 20% of fleet. 20% is a fifth part of entire Russian Navy army in this area. It's a very big army, but the Russians lost one submarine, if you remember, Moscow cruiser. They lost like two big marine ships and so on. But the most important question is not that the Russians lost 20% of their fleet. The most important power, how much of firepower the Russians lost, because 20% doesn't mean that the Russians lost 20% of firepower. Maybe it's 5% of firepower, probably. Maybe it's 90% of firepower. Who knows? So this number, I can't provide you this number, but I believe that maybe somebody, maybe military summary, will make this analysis and will try to understand the number, not of the quantity of ships and the percentage of ships of entire fleet, but the firepower that the Russians have lost since the beginning of the special military operation in the Black Sea. This is more interesting information. Now we're moving to Zaporozhye area, to the Bradley Square, and today, as I understand, the Ukrainians have started having troubles, big troubles in this area. As we discussed in the morning video, the Russians launched another offensive operation in direction of the northern part of Rabotina. And as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to get the last geolocated coordinates we get from this area is this point on the northern edge of Rabotina. The Ukrainians, as a result of FPV drone strike, managed to damage or destroy the Russian personnel carrier. And this is not the end of the story. Right before I start making this video, we got another geolocations from the Russian side, how the Russians start bombing and attacking and basically establish complete fire. Let's say, I don't know what else of control the Russians managed to establish over the northern part, the northern edge, the northern entrance in Rabotina. So we can say that the main supply road that Ukrainians used to have was cut off by the Russians, maybe on the 26th of December. And we can say that 26th of December, I think so, I think we can do this, we can call as the official date of the beginning of the second battle for Rabotina. So according to all these geolocations that we have, the Russians, there are very high chances, probably managed to establish control over this territory on the Rabotina direction. All these fields were captured by the Russians during the clashes of the previous few days. They managed to establish complete fire control over the top of Rabotina, over this territory. And the next thing the Russians need to do is to launch offensive operation to the northern part of T0408 road. Then the Russians have possibilities to attack Rabotina from the southwest. They have possibility to attack from the south, and of course the Russians have possibility to attack the village from the southeast. The Ukrainians just have few supply roads, this one, but they lost the main road, and now they need to find another solution how to get equipment reinforcement from Novodanilovka. So once again, the battle for Rabotina has started once again, but from the Russian side, and maybe the next few days we're going to receive first footage or scenes from inside of this village. Now we are moving to the South Donetsk direction. We also have few updates from this territory. The Russians published just two videos of FAP 500 usage and FAP 1500. On this video we see the heavy bombardments or heavy bombing of the coal mine on the northeast of Ugledar, the area that Ukrainians use as the main logistic hub, ammo depot hub. There are a lot of underground facilities, and there are a lot of concentration of Ukrainian forces that they hide below the surface. So it's like the main base of the Ukrainians in this area with operational reserves that they can use to send their forces to Ugledar if it's necessary, and to send forces to the fields and tree lines on the north of Mykolaiv, and if it's necessary they can use the same area to send reinforcements to Konstantinovka and Novomykhailovka. And the second video we got from Pobeda. The Russians start bombing and shelling this territory, so this is the beginning of artillery and aviation bombardment preparation of the village. Obviously that within the next 48 hours we're gonna receive first attempt from the Russian side of storming this village, and the Russians will try to do this as fast as possible. Probably they plan to complete the battle for Pobeda before the Christmas, Orthodox Christmas, and after that, as we discussed in the previous videos, the Russians, by taking this village and forcing the Ukrainians to step back further to Paraskovievka, Konstantinovka, the Russians will be able to get the operational space, and after that they can do whatever they like and to move in any direction they like. When talking about Novomykhailovka, we haven't received nothing, we haven't received anything. There are clashes, but most of the Ukrainian sources are saying that currently the main clashes are taking place along this line. So on the edge of the village, the Russians can't bypass this yellow line, and the main reason of that is that they still haven't found the solution how to concentrate armored vehicles in this area. The Russians can't redeploy heavy tanks and personnel carriers that they can use for penetration of Ukrainian defense belt, so that's why they can't use just infantry, but infantry is not enough to enter the village from the south. This is first thing, and the second thing is that the Russians are waiting when the main forces from the north will get as close as possible to the village from the north as well. So before getting this line, there are no chances that the Russians will start the main part of the battle for Novomykhailovka. But anyway, I believe that also the Russians will try before the Orthodox Christmas to enter this village, and maybe they will try to repeat the story of Solidar with Novomykhailovka, with the purposes not just to capture Novomykhailovka, but to penetrate and to capture like two, three cities, and basically to cut this territory in few parts and collapse Ukrainian defense in Ugledar and, let's say, Maximilianovka, Kurakhova. So they have some plan, and probably they will try to implement this plan during the next days. When talking about Avdiivka, as you can see, there is like lack of geolocations and icons. Some of them are coming from the north. We have the very interesting video of Ukrainian positions on the northern part of chemical plant, machine gun position, which means that the situation is in Ukrainian control, at least this part of chemical plant. We have some videos from Stepova. As I understand, this footage, these geolocations were published just today. On this video, we can see the Ukrainian position somewhere along these tree lines and how the Ukrainians were trying to repel the Russian attacks. The Ukrainian soldiers were counter-attacking and were attacking the offensive Russian soldiers. So these two videos, and the second one is the work of Bradley also between these tree lines. These two videos confirm that probably the Russians were forced to step back from the northern part of Stepova towards the railway, and the Ukrainians managed to restore control over half or maybe more of Stepova-Petrovska. We will probably adjust this map before the next video, because as I understand, the Ukrainians control at least 80% of the village, and the Russians took a decision not to maybe risk and to rethink and to create another plan. On this video, we can see the Russian FPV drone strike against the Ukrainian infantry in the southeastern part of the same village. So no control of the Russians in this area. Now we are moving to Gorlovka, and probably this is the funniest, if we can call this video funny, videos during the day. We have a lot of updates, mobilization, checkpoints, the Ukrainian Storm Shadow strike, destroyed ship, and some very difficult updates. And today we got very interesting video from Gorlovka. On this video we can see Ukrainian attempt to attack the Russian forces. As you can see, the Ukrainians, a platoon of Ukrainian forces was storming the hill even from this perspective, this is a suicide operation to storm the hill, but for some reason the Ukrainians took a decision that they can do this. So as you can see, significant number of Ukrainians, the first edge forces, were trying to suppress the Russian positions. Maybe after that they were planning to start, let's say, storming operation to enter the trenches and to start fighting there. And by the way, according to this video, as you can see, the Ukrainians managed to get very close to the Russian positions, even to get almost on the hill, but at some point something went wrong. So just pay attention to the soldier on the right bottom corner, this guy. At some point, this soldier, this Ukrainian stormtrooper, took a decision to take the grenade and basically to throw grenade in direction of Russian positions. He did everything as he was trained in the NATO centers, according to the Western coordinators and instructors. Maybe he was personally trained by some United Kingdom instructor, who knows, and maybe German, who knows. And he threw grenade, but for some reason he threw grenade right exactly in the group of Ukrainian soldiers. These 4 Ukrainian soldiers, they were shocked when they saw a grenade appeared right in front of them, and they start running away in different direction. After that there was an explosion, but no worries, nobody was wounded. But for some reason after that explosion, everybody took a decision to stop the storming operation, and they basically ran away from this position. Very funny case. So, but from another side, this guy threw grenade in there, guys. Nobody died, nobody was wounded. But I think that all this, the entire team of this platoon should be thankful for him, because nobody knows how this storm operation would continue if they manage to enter the hill. There are very high chances that they might be, let's say, attacked by the Russians, by missiles, and maybe probably most of them could be dead or something like this. But he saved their lives, and everybody just ran away, and everybody is happy. And I think that this is the situation in this area. Very funny video, I think, just from this lucky or unlucky perspective. And that's so a case, an interesting case somewhere in the western part of Gorlovka. Now we are moving to Bakhmut, Artyomov's direction. We have lots of geolocations, and most of them are coming around 215.7 hill. The Russians on these videos were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions. They have some concentrated fire with multi-launch rocket systems, aviation bombs, just regular rockets, artillery rounds. So as I understand, all these things tell us that after probably a week of clashes for 215.7 hill, the Russians managed to dig in deeper completely. The Ukrainians made a series of counterattacks, but they couldn't achieve success. And now the Russians, after they managed to dig in deeper, start bombing the Ukrainian fortifications around 215.7 hill. This is the highest hill in this area. They control the entire situation. So this is the first concentration of Russian fire. This is the second concentration of Russian fire. All these geolocations tell us that the Russians moved their focus further around 215.7 hill, and that means that the next target of the Russians is going to they're going to improve their positions to increase the foothold in direction of Ivanovska, in direction of Klishchevka itself. So there are very high chances that the Russians will complete this mission successfully, and the Ukrainians basically will be forced to step back further to the canal, and or to at least to keep them as close as possible to the area, with the possibility to evacuate from this area in a minute. When talking Ivanovska, no changes, no reports about any attacks or geolocations. Probably there were, but we haven't received anything. And the same story about Bogdanovka. Probably there are very heavy clashes on the road to Grigorovka and Bogdanovka, but we haven't received nothing reliable that we can trust, believe, or even update the map. So let's wait for tomorrow. I believe tomorrow we're going to receive something. When talking about Liman direction, as if you remember, during the previous videos we discussed, according to most of the mappers, that Russians managed to continue their offensive operation further to Terny. We discussed about the distance between the edge Ukraine positions and the Russians, that they're like 2 kilometers, not more. But after all these, let's say, unproved geolocations and changes on map, according to many sources, we got the video. And according to this video was geolocated. As you can see, the Russians on this video were bombing the edge Ukrainian positions on Terny direction, which confirms that the Russians do have progress, but not so deep and not so close to Zhiribets River. So as I understand, the current front line, the current picture, the front line shows more or less the exact position on this direction of Russian attack. When talking about Kupiansk, we haven't received almost anything from this area. Once again, no Uday for 5th or 4th day in a row, so probably his diary has ended, or let's wait a little bit. Of course, maybe he will return with more videos, but for now this is the situation. And as you can see, according to the latest geolocation, the snow left this territory. Now the weather, because of the fact that snow left and this is lots of water, the quality of the ground is very poor, and now the Ukrainians started destroying with FPV drone strikes the abandoned Russian armored vehicles that they were using during attack on Sinkovka that took place after 10th, from 10th till 20th of December. And probably there are very high chances that the Russians haven't managed to dig in deeper in the northern part of Sinkovka, or they managed, but for now they can't continue developing this situation. The Ukrainians step by step starting destroying the tanks, and probably the situation has been stabilized. Now we should expect probably more attempts from the Ukrainian side to counterattack. I think that the Russians need a small operational pause, and maybe after that they will continue moving to the south of Sinkovka. We have one geolocation from this area. The Russian FPV drones attacked Ukrainian positions in this part of Sinkovka, which confirms the Ukrainian control over this territory. We will not watch the video because of losses and killed people and something like this. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.